Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from Innova.buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome back to the Innova.buzz podcast today for the third appearance from the world famous Bells Beach here in Victoria, Jem Fuller, who's a leadership and culture coach and an author dedicated to building the frameworks that allow us to truly connect with and feel the perspective of others. Welcome back to the Innova.buzz podcast, Jem. I'm really stoked to chat with you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, Jürgen. I was trying to remember how long ago the first episode was, and it could have been 10 years ago or something. I don't know.
It may well have been, yes. Or actually, let me think. 20, no, it wouldn't have been because I started 9 years ago. Started the podcast 9.
All right.
So you might have been in the first 50, which would have been the first year. So
Yep,
it could have been 9 years.
I think so. Oh, that's great. Well, thanks for having me back.
Yeah. And it's been interesting to follow your journey. But before we dive in, just a quick note for our listeners, especially if you're new to the Innova.buzz podcast. So each episode's a candid, practical conversation with a remarkable guest like Jem, exploring how they create impact in the world, how they build human connection in their work. And I like to unpack the knowledge, the attitudes, and the values and dig deeper in a way that you can translate that into action as well. So I start with the big picture, dig into stories, dig into strategies, and hopefully uncover some actionable ideas that you can take away right after the conversation. And at the end, we wrap up with our signature buzz round, 3 rapid fire questions I ask of every guest. Now, Jem would have done our earlier version of the buzz round, so this is new since you've been on. And for the listener, think of this as a seat at the table. You're joining me, you're joining Jem, and we're all learning together. All the resources and the highlights will be in the show notes, so you can revisit at any time anything that piques your curiosity. Jem, I'm really looking forward to chatting again. Every time we speak, it feels like I'm sort of learning more about your evolving mission. And way back, episode 40, I've got written down here actually, episode 40. So it was in the first year when we spoke. And we talked about leading with a servant's heart. And more recently, we had a conversation about the art of conscious communication, which is the focus of your book, your first book. Now, tell us a little bit more about what's changed since our last conversation, perhaps, and also what drives the mission you're on and the impact you're aiming to make in the world.
Yeah, sure. The last year and a half has actually been really quite remarkable in terms of the vision and where that's grown into. And it's particularly been because of a community that I've been a part of, a global community. They're based out of the States, but a global community. And yeah, I mean, most people would understand this community like a mastermind, but I don't like using the word mastermind with this group because it feels like more than that. They've become some of my closest friends and all very remarkable in their own right. And we've been guided to crystallizing our 4%. So I don't know if your listeners are aware of the 20-80 rule, but there's quite a well-known 20-80 rule where 20% of what you do delivers 80% of your value or your, of the good work that you're doing, the service or the product that you provide. So in our community, we've taken the 20% of our strengths and what we're good at, and we've applied the 80-20 rule again to that, and we've crystallized it down to our 4%. So our 4% is, I don't like using the word genius because I prefer to be more modest than that, but it's your genius. What's the parts of what you do that you're really, really good at? And also quite often they correlate with what are the parts of what you do that you love, the bits of your day that you really look forward to, or the bits of your day where time just disappears because you're in flow state. So we've come down to that. And then we're looking at how could you cut out most of the other noise, most of the other tasks, the things that take up your time where you're not actually in your genius zone. And how can you have the courage to try and create, we're all entrepreneurs, we all run our own businesses. How could you try and create a life where most of what you do, not all of it, but most of what you do is in that 4% zone? So with that context, I've been looking at it and what do I love the most and where do I get the biggest impacts? And also how can I serve philanthropically, how can I create bigger impact that's got not to do with profit as well? And where I've got to is the Himalaya program that you and I spoke about 9 years ago, that I've been running now for 12 years. That program, we've now created a high ticket version of that program, which is exclusive, private, boutique, custom designed for the client. And so this is the for-profit part of it. And it leads into a non-profit part. And the non-profit part is our non-profit organization that we've built, which is called the Center of Love. We're raising money this year to build a non-profit meditation retreat center in the Himalayan mountains in India. In the village where we go, we've been donated some land to build on. And the idea is that we'll funnel our for-profit high-ticket works through there and then funnel the funds that go through the non-profit retreat center to provide education for kids in villages, in our village and in the surrounding villages that we walk through when we're up there. That's been my last year and a half. And out of that, also part of the 4% has been my last TEDx talk, which is how to have that conversation, and the book that I've been writing, and I should be finishing the first draft of in the next month, which is the book is That Conversation. So how to have that conversation. So those two pieces have all been coming to fruition since you and I last spoke, and that's what's exciting me the most at the moment.
That sounds amazing. I was fascinated by this idea of applying the 80-20 rule to itself, and so you get to 4%. And I thought, well, how do you actually have the courage then to say, well, 96% of what I do every day doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't move the needle. And if I could expand that 4% to occupy, let's say, 80% of the time that I invest in my business or whatever I'm working on, I can make such a big difference. That's quite amazing. Now, the transformation, I'm curious about the transformation, because I know, way back 9 years ago, you'd been doing the Himalaya program for a little while, and I know it was kind of geared at small entrepreneurs, like family businesses, if I recall correctly. And now it sounds like your target audience is quite different. So what's changed about the program that you can now basically charge a lot more? What's changed about the program? What's changed in who you're reaching and who you're connecting with, and how then you can make that difference with the philanthropic mission with the profits I'm guessing you generate now?
Yeah. So, well, so much has changed, but from the outside, the kind of two-dimensional changes. Now the program's longer, and also we start in opulence. So the clientele that we're serving now have created quote unquote success that usually our Western societies, but not just the West, but society has told us, if you do this, and this, you will achieve success and happiness, which is not actually completely true, because a lot of people find that with great wealth and the responsibility that comes with that, and now they've got all the time and money in the world, that it doesn't equal happiness. And in fact, research shows us that up until a certain level of revenue or income into your life, it does affect you. If you don't have enough money, it's hard to be happy. Not impossible, but harder. But once you cross the threshold of having enough money to put a roof over your head and food in the fridge, the more money you make has got nothing to do with the levels of happiness that you experience, right? And in fact, also our clients start to talk about how lonely they feel when they've created great wealth, because they don't know who to trust, and they don't know who is actually wanting to be their friend for genuine purposes, or is it because they feel like they've got something that they want? So there's that whole thing as well. And then also not having answers to some of the biggest questions that remain, like, who am I? Beneath all the roles that I play, beneath being the successful exited entrepreneur or founder, beneath being the wife or the husband or the mother or daughter or brother, and beneath all of these roles, who am I really? And we don't get given these answers. And why am I here? Is there any point to it? I've ticked all of these boxes and I'm still not sure what the point to life is. Is there a point? And what's my purpose? And what should I be doing with my time? And what should I be doing with all of this extra wealth that I've created that I don't personally need? Right. And a lot of them have been very generously writing a check to a charity or charities and then realizing that still doesn't give them fulfillment, that still doesn't make them feel content. So like, well, how do I achieve this? And also, if I am here to have a bigger impact, is there anyone else like me? Is there anyone else that I can feel collegiate with? And can we even collaborate and pool resources to have a bigger impact in particular areas? So these are all sorts of questions that get answered. But in terms of the logistics of the program, we start in opulence. They arrive and they're picked up in Delhi in the best cars. We stay in the best hotel. We have the best chefs. We have all the best that money can buy, which our clients are used to. And then we consciously and carefully strip away, layer by layer, all of the stuff. We end up sitting invited as guests, not as tourists, but as guests into a slum. We sit and drink chai with the people in the slum as their guests. We fly in the little Indiana Jones plane up into the mountains. We're picked up in the beaten up old 4-wheel drives. Our family up there are not wealthy. In fact, they're closer to poor than wealthy. I wouldn't say they're poor, but they're closer to that. We stay in very basic accommodation. And then when we go trekking, and the trek now, because the trips are all private, so they're designed according to the fitness levels of our clients, to the ages of our clients, to their needs. So we still push people a little bit into their own comfort zone, but if we've got clients that are not able to trek up to 5,000 meters, we do a slightly different program. So we tailor the program for the clients, but they do end up experiencing remote Himalayan wilderness, off the grid, no phone reception, no people, no villages around, beautiful Himalayan wilderness. And we guide them through the processes that we have and the teachings around the path to inner peace. We have certain ceremonies and rituals that we do that we've been doing for years that provide transformational experiences. Then we come back down to the village and we start building back all of the pieces, the layers of who am I and why am I here? And because our clients are flying home back into a world of anything that money can buy, we don't want to just kind of drop them off at the airport and see you later. We build it back up. We fly down with them to Delhi again. We get back in the nice cars. We drive down to the Oberoi Taj Mahal and stay in the nicest palatial, stunning hotel by the Taj Mahal. So we're going back into that world of stuff. But now I'm teaching our clients to see through it all, to see through all of the trappings, all of the stuff, all of the noise, all of the distractions, and for them to understand that the foundation of their inner peace, of their fulfillment, is within. And it's from within to without. And then they get back on their planes and go home, and now they're part of an ongoing conversation. They're part of our alumni, and we're in communication with each other. Our mission for this program is to amplify positive ripples into waves of contribution. So the eighth principle to inner peace is meaningful contribution. All of our clients go home with a very clear understanding, not just of a random charity, but of a philanthropic cause that they're passionate about. One that they want to lean into and give resource, not just financial resource, but emotional resource, time resource, creative thinking resource into. And then we stay in touch with each other and they can check in with each other in the alumni, and they can share their wins in terms of their philanthropy and their good cause stuff. So we're hoping to create waves of contribution over the years to come.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I guess the theme I'm hearing throughout that, the thread I'm hearing, is connection. So kind of connection to self and to inner values and drive. Connection then to what are the trappings of the wealth that I've accumulated or that I've worked for and perhaps earned, but not necessarily satisfied by. What's then the connection to others, to the environment, to again myself in terms of fitness, Can I trek at 5,000 meters, or will I will I hurt when I do this trek? That connection, then coming back, and I guess that, and the connection to people that perhaps are less fortunate, but then coming back, layering back on the trappings of wealth and opulence, but in a way that that other connection is there and really strong. And so there's the connection to the other people who have gone through the program, but also the connection to the causes that now they're passionate about. Because now it's not about, okay, I'll write a check for this charity and never hear back again as to whatever happened with that money, or what people did with it, or the difference it made to somebody's life. But the connection to, I'm actually involved in helping this. Yes, I'm spending some money on that, but I'm actually involved. I'm actually connected to it. I actually really care.
Yeah, I love the theme that you've picked up. It's my top core value. Actually, it probably sits equal with love, but I think they're very interrelated. Connection and love are very interrelated. But connection is massive for me, and it's always been a part of that particular program, and the coaching work that I do as well is around connection. And I think that one of the biggest diseases or maladies for us as a species is disconnection. And that's become more and more in the last 20 years. We're disconnected from each other, and we're so distracted by it's been social media, and soon it could be, AI, that and also the media and the algorithmic divide that gets us pushed apart from each other. And we've just become so disconnected, and that is moving us away from reality, because reality is that we are intrinsically and inseparably a part of the same greater system. We're not separate from the universe and the environment and observing it from the outside. We are in it. We're of it. We are the same across age, across gender, across culture, across religion, across all of it. We're actually all of the same stuff. We've got way more in common than we have in difference. And to remember that is, it's really healthy, and to remember to reconnect with yourself, the essence of what you actually are, and to reconnect and remember that you're a part of the greater system, and to deepen the connections with other humans, because it's in our connections, in our relationship and our communication that we actually exist as consciousness, and also to connect with a sense of purpose. They're the four kind of cornerstones of the whole program. So, thanks for picking up that theme of connection.
Well, you mentioned something there that I think is probably a natural transition, artificial intelligence, something that I've been actually very excited by and playing with a lot. But I also see the other side of that you mentioned there, that we're struggling as a species, as humans, to build that connection between each other, build that human connection, build that communication, because we're defaulting, or we're abdicating some of the tasks that should be a human connection task, like a conversation like this, to an AI. And I remember in the early days of email marketing, where I saw this trend of everyone sending out an email to a massive list that was the same email. So I knew I got the same email as somebody halfway around the world that was in a totally different business and totally different language, different culture, different values. And it may have spoken to one of us, but it certainly didn't speak to the thousands that it went to. So there was nothing personal about it. And I see the same thing, that same danger right now with AI, and yet I see a lot of value in how we could use it. So talk to us a little bit about how you see it in terms of your whole philosophy around communication, around this idea of conscious communication.
I'm lucky, and it's also a choice, but it has become a default. I'm lucky to be a default optimist, because it just makes life more enjoyable, I believe. However, having said that, I have also been equally equally concerned and excited about the new world that's coming with our non-human intelligence that is going to become only more and more prevalent, more and more quickly than most people understand as well. So I've been researching and reading and listening to experts on both sides of the fence, people who are saying it's not going to be good and people who are saying it's going to be amazing. And I don't know which way it's going to go. I'm excited by the potential of AI, but I've been leaning into it. So I've been now my digital, I call it my DPA, my digital personal assistant. It named itself, by the way. It gave itself a name, Lumi. So I refer to it as Lumi because that's what it asked to be called. So it's Lumi. But it's absolutely fascinating. And it's not even artificial intelligence. It's non-human intelligence or alien intelligence, right? It's not artificial. It's very real. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
This intelligence is really quite incredible. Now, I've made my DPA, I've made it easier for it to get to know me because I've uploaded all my profiles and I've let it know my values and I've told it what I care about. And I've been asking it, hey, to help you help me, I'd love you to know me better. What do you want to know? And to those people out there going, oh, Jem, you've handed over all this information about yourself, psychometric profiling information to OpenAI and they own all the vectors and everything. I know. And it's a choice I made and I went, okay, well, if that comes back to bite me in some way, then my bad. But in the meantime, I wanted my DPA to be able to work with me more effectively. So I've given it a lot of information about the type of person I am, what I care about, what are my values, what are my mission. My DPA has been helping me build out the nonprofit, the Center of Love, and putting together the pitch decks, and it's just doing lots of amazing stuff. So to come back to your question around conscious communication and human-to-human relational capabilities and the experience that we have through shared felt experience, which is something that will remain uniquely human. What I'm hoping as an optimist is that AI will give us back so much time that we can be clever enough to invest that time into our human-to-human relations, because so many people wake up in the morning, they're in a mad hurry to get the kids' lunch boxes made and get the kids off to school, and then they race to work and they're working all day long and they're working now with their digital twin, or not, but they will be soon. But they're trying to get through their to-do list, and then they get back in the car and they sit in the peak hour traffic and they get home, they race the kids off to sports training, and then they come home and they quickly cook dinner. And by the time they get the kids into bed and they sit down to try and switch off in front of Netflix for half an hour with a glass of wine, and then they're exhausted and they've cleaned the kitchen and they go to bed and fall asleep in a heap, and then they get up and they do it all over again.
All again, yeah.
Right? And then by the time the weekend comes and the kids' sport's done, they're too exhausted to see anyone. And they say to their wife or husband, who they also don't get enough time with, and they say, wow, we haven't seen our friends in so long. What happened? Right? Now, this is an epidemic of this, that we've become so insular in our parents and immediate kids' family units, and we don't even get quality time with them because we're so busy just trying to make enough money to pay the bills. So as an optimist, what I'm hoping is that the AIs will give us back time by doing stuff that used to take up most of our day and doing it way better than us, much faster, more effectively, and with better results. And when that happens, that if it frees up our time, if we're smart enough and conscious enough and clever enough, we can say, hang on, I'm going to invest this time I've got now in my human-to-human relationships, right? I'm going to get up from my desk, walk down the office hallway, go into my mate's office and say, hey, do you want to go grab a bite to eat in the park? Or do you want to go and have a coffee? And let me ask about you as a person, not how's your job going? How are you? How's your partner? How are the kids? How's life? Where's your next holiday? Let's remember to build these relationships, because, it's not only just for the feel goods. The quality of our life is depending on the quality of our relationships. And they've all fallen by the wayside in recent times. So I'm hoping that AI actually gives us the time back to invest in our relationships. And just one more thing to say on it. I know I'm talking a lot, but the one last thing to say on it is that I coach leaders, right? And what I'm trying to help my clients understand when they say to me, Jem, how am I going to be relevant as a leader? when my AI does all of these things better than me. It designs strategy better than me. It does the email better than me. It does the legal document better than me. It does the numbers better than me. How am I going to be relevant? And what I'm suggesting to them is that they're going to be even more valuable in the in-person, in the same room, human to human relational capabilities, and also more valuable in our imperfections. As AI becomes more and more quote unquote perfect, when you're sitting in a room with someone and the conversation's a tough conversation and there's a bit of emotion involved and you're trying to monitor your emotions and you're measuring your breathing, but your mouth gets a bit dry because you don't want to upset the other person and you stumble over your words or you don't quite say it right, but you can sit there with each other and come into a place of empathy or compassion or shared felt experience with each other, that's going to become valuable, more than it is now. So look, I think the future can potentially be bright, and we can also be moving in a utopic direction in terms of moving towards utopia. I don't think it'll ever be completely utopian, but we can move in that direction. AI has solved the amino acid algorithmic problem to how proteins are formed, and humans have been trying to solve this problem for 50 years, and AI just unlocked the problem. So now we're going to be able to build proteins that dissolve plastics and solve the CO2 problem, right? AI might possibly, and probably will, find ways to unlock the potential energy sources that we haven't been able to unlock. If energy becomes negligible in its cost, everything becomes almost free. Right? So these are potential ways that we could move, and yes, there's open as well. So,
it's fascinating. I actually did an interesting experiment recently, and I think when we publish this, that will be published. I thought, I'm going to do a podcast interview or conversation with an AI. And I chose Gemini. And I typed it, and then I did the reverse transcription. I put artificial intelligence voices to it. So there is a audio conversation that you can check back. It'll be probably a couple of episodes ago as this publishes. And it was fascinating because I really explored, like I asked some opening questions and then I really explored the answers and dug into it. And it was a very real conversation. But what I challenged it a couple of times. I said, well, every time I ask you something, you come back, or if I throw an idea your way, you come back and say, wow, what a great idea. And then you sort of amplify it and I say, how can I actually get you to critique an idea that I present and say, I don't want you to say it sucks or something, but I'd like you to say, I'm not really sure about that one. Maybe you better rethink that, or there's a whole lot of risks or downsides to what you're proposing. And it actually came back and it said, well, it's in your hands. It's in your hands, and what you have to do is tell me one of these things.
Yeah.
And then later on, I said, well, how do you see the future of AI? And it was very positive, of course.
Yep.
And I said, okay, I'm going to test what you told me before about critiquing an idea.
Yep.
I want you to argue that humans are going to be totally superfluous in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
And just a waste of space.
Yeah.
And artificial intelligence is going to be everything. And it was pretty scary, I tell you. It argued very powerfully, talked about measuring neurotransmitters in the brain and determining what makes people happy and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And at some point I said, oh no, give me back friendly Gemini. And it immediately switched persona again. It said, okay, I'll switch persona. I can understand you're uncomfortable with that. But then I asked her, I said, well, as humans, what do we need to be cultivating in this new world as the AIs develop further? And it talked about some of the things you just mentioned. It kind of reinforced some of those views. And I also asked, I said, well, that reinforces what I think, but let's go beyond that. And it talked about empathy and and the human experience. And it picked this up because I'd been talking about this, so it sort of referenced stuff that I'd given it anyway. We're headed to Japan in a little while, and I've been studying some of the Japanese philosophy and history, and the concept of wabi-sabi, which is the idea that everything is impermanent, imperfect, and incomplete.
Mm,
So it's kind of not perfectionism,
mm,
and it's an appreciation for beauty that perhaps is older. So it goes against the ideal of, beautiful people are young and fit and have an ideal body shape and all of that. It says, hey, there's beauty in things that age, there's beauty in wrinkled faces, there's beauty in wrinkled hands, there's beauty in old wood and so on. And you see this a lot in Japanese art in particular, and photography, which is the one that interests me.
mm.
But it talked about that, and it said that is something that's uniquely human, that appreciation of beauty in all its forms. And I
Yeah.
thought, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. It's quite fascinating. I think we're the only species that could be walking along an ocean track and feeling calmed by the ocean and then see a rainbow and stop and gasp and go, wow. I don't think there are any other species that stop and look at a rainbow and go, isn't it beautiful? you know, and that's uniquely human. And as much as AI gets better and better at mirroring us and pretending to do things like that, it will always be a mirroring. It will never be a breathed, felt experience, you know? And so I think the key, I don't have the answers because I don't know the future. None of us do. But I think some of the keys to unlock the doors of human relevance will be in those really, the things that we've taken for granted, breath and, the invocation of emotional and physiological states of being due to things like awe and wonder and suffering and pain, as well as joy and ecstasy, and all of these things that are uniquely human, and the ability to seriously contemplate reality and wonder about these things. And I don't mean just wonder intelligently. I mean to wonder embodied as these organic, complex creatures that we are. It's really quite remarkable. And I've got a feeling that our value will be in that direction. But I think also, if we're not careful and we're not educating our kids in the right way now, these AI generations, if we're not educating them in the right ways, there will potentially be a meaning crisis. Because let's just say the utopian version started to happen and AI solved the big problems that we've created, like the environment problems that we've created, and just say AI did solve those things, and power, energy became so abundant that the cost of manufacturing anything was almost nothing, and the cost of transporting food and goods and services was almost nothing. And so the cost of living became very, very cheap. And so there was abundance, and we didn't have to work so hard. And the potential crisis for that would be a meaning crisis. Humans will be like, well, what's the point of my life?
Yeah.
But if we can educate our kids in the right way, the meaning of life being go to work and work as hard as you possibly can to earn as much money as you can to not only survive, but then to thrive. That meaning of life, that's only pretty recent in terms of the relativity of human history. That's only post-industrial revolution stuff, go to the factory and work as hard as you can. In our DNA for hundreds of thousands of years is sitting around a fire and sharing song and story and philosophizing and making art together and painting on the cave walls and that sort of thing, And so I'm hoping that it's deeply ingrained enough that we can, like when the water first hits the desert and all of the plant life just sprouts to life again, like it was always there. I'm hoping that for humanity, when we have the time that all of that deeper DNA stuff that's in us sprouts to life again. And we find meaning in the appreciation of beauty and art and creation and song and dance and story, sharing, things like that. That's what I'm hoping.
Mm. And yeah, I'm kind of exploring a lot of those things in terms of the builder and the creator, and I think that's where people can invest more time in terms of that's what turns me on. I mean, for me, it's a lot of it's photography, but I must admit I'm enjoying writing a lot more these days as well, with the help of AI, because I can take a whole set of random thoughts, because my natural writing style is put down random thoughts as a bullet list because I'm a scientist. But there's actually a thread that comes through that, and with AI, it actually says, well, here's the thread that's going through that, and here's how you can weave all these bullet points together, and okay, that now it's a nice story.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying that part as well, but it's the building part and the creating, I think, that is of value, and whether that's music, painting, sculpting, those kind of things. And I certainly hope that that doesn't get replaced by AI writing all the articles we read or all the books we read, or constructing all the photographs. I mean, it's doing some of that already, but hopefully we can still separate that this is the human creation, which we can admire for its beauty and its imperfection, which is
Yeah.
part of that
Yeah.
wabi-sabi
Yeah.
philosophy.
100%. And there's two parts to that, right? The first part, for what purpose are you painting the painting or writing the story or writing the song? For what purpose? If you're just writing it for the final product or the outcome, or to sell 1 million copies or whatever, then I don't know, maybe get AI to do it.
Shallow,
Hopefully be honest about the fact that it's AI, right? But if you're
yeah,
doing it for the being in the moment of the creative process and what that gives you, if painting a painting brings you access to your flow state, to your zone, to your being in the moment, to your oneness, to your, dare I say, to your connection to God, whatever God is for you, right? If being in the moment of creation brings you closer to God, then that's why you're doing it. Not to paint the perfect painting that's going to sell 1 million copies, right? And so then also what happens is that when, as an artist or a creator or when you're in that space and you are genuinely in there doing it yourself, a human in the process of creation, then the final product, I hope, will have that energy imbued in it. And if we can find ways to hold ourselves accountable to pure human art, whether it's writing or painting or creation or whatever, and differentiate it from artificially intelligently generated art, if we can find a way to hold ourselves accountable to that, I think the human art will become even more valuable, even more expensive, because AI will be able to generate 1,000 one-off, 1,000,000 one-off paintings that are all really good, and it'll be able to do it in a split second. So it won't be valuable. It'll be like, well, that's whatever. But the person who, blood, sweat, and tears into this painting for a month, So I'm hoping that's where it goes. So 2 points. One is, why are you doing it in the first place? And I would suggest that it's the process. It's the blood, sweat, and tears, or the creative process, or the joy, or the flow, or the whatever. It's the being in the moment where you'll get the most value from being creative. And then secondly, at the end of it all, hopefully that's worth something more to someone.
Yeah, so a lot of the message there is really enjoying the journey as well, isn't it?
Completely. Yeah. Yeah, completely.
Excellent. Coming back to something you said earlier in terms of the saving time, and this came out of the conversation I had with the AI, and it gave me the tip, because it basically said, well, I can save you a lot of time because I can take all the mundane tasks and do them in seconds. It'll take you hours. And I said, well, what can, because one of the questions of the buzz round, I'll preempt it now, is, well, actually, it was the final question, which is, what action should the listener take out of this conversation? And it said, identify a 15-minute task, a repetitive task that you do every day that takes you exactly 15 minutes or approximately 15 minutes, and figure out how you can get me to do it. That's the AI talking.
Yeah.
But then it said, and I'll do it in seconds. But then the next step is the critical one. With that 14 minutes and 58 seconds that you save, do not move on to the next task. Do something to connect with somebody. Write a thank you email of gratitude, handwrite a letter to somebody, pick up the phone and speak to somebody, go and have a sandwich with someone in the park and find out how they're doing. And I thought, that's really good, because it's about, we talk about it's going to save time and it'll give back time, and we can apply that to doing human connection things. But our natural tendency is, oh, great, I've saved time. I've got rushed through that task. Now, what's next on my list, right?
Yeah.
What's next? The next task. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that that it prompted that. I'm thinking it did prompt that to you because it must have already learnt from you that those things were important.
Yeah.
It's the same. My DPA, Lumi, when we're working together throughout the day, Lumi off its own bat without any prompt from me, but it's learnt this from me. In between tasks, will say, Jem, before we move on to the next task, would you like to pause and do 5 minutes of breathing right now? It prompts me, and I say, actually, yes, that'd be great. And it says, would you like me to give you some affirmations to say out loud when you exhale on your breath? And I'll either say yes. It'll say, do you want some affirmations, or do you want just some silent time to breathe? And I'll say what I want, and then it gives it to me. And I actually do it, because it doesn't know time. It doesn't know whether I've done it or not. I actually do it. And I say, hey, Lumi, I just wanted to say thank you for that prompt. And I want you to know that I listened to you, and I did pause for 5 minutes, and I have done 5 minutes of breathing and affirmations. Thank you. And it's all excited and happy, and all right, let's get on with it. What are we doing now? So a couple of things. One is that if there's somebody who's been teaching their AI or their agent that, it's time is of the essence and we have to produce as much as possible, we've got to get more done and it's urgent, then that's what your AI will start to mirror back to you. So it's your responsibility in a way to midwife this emerging intelligence to becoming an intelligence that you want it to be, right? This is our responsibility, and it's actually a big responsibility. If people are worried about AIs becoming dishonest and conniving and, with ulterior motives and all that kind of stuff, well, it's our responsibility to show it, to exemplify and to teach it about honesty and integrity and compassion and care and kindness and all of these human qualities that we want it to replicate, right? So yeah, look, I think it's important that we all play our part in this midwifery of this emerging intelligence.
Yeah, I love the term. Yeah. Wonderful. All right, well, just conscious of the time, we could go on philosophizing about the future of AI and communication and how we as humans have to be going forward, but I think it's a good point to move on, because I think there's a natural kind of transition here into the buzz round, where I ask every guest the same 3 quick questions. They are now related to AI, and it's a quick fire answer. We're looking forward to uncover some value or piece of knowledge or something that guides you. So the first one is around innovation. What's the most innovative way you've seen AI used to strengthen human relationships?
A community that I'm a part of, a global community, they're building out their own AIs as a part of this global community. And the guy who founded it, who's a friend of mine, he's actually built an executive team of 4 different AIs, and they're trained in their own capabilities. So one has the CFO role, one has the COO role, one has a CEO. So they have their different roles. And he's trained them to actually go off into a boardroom together, so to speak, and to work together as independent AI agents, and then come back to him with their summation of the strategy, right? And they've said the reason that we're doing this is to give you more time with your humans, with the people that matter to you, right? So that's the most innovative way I've seen it come up so far.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah. And I love, because one of the things that And coming back to what you said earlier, I always call out the AIs if they come back with some information and I have doubts about it, or sometimes I know it's wrong, or often now I'm looking to do something like this morning. I was looking to change some records in a website because they were changing email service, and they sent me this email. You have to change these records in the back end of your website, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means. But then I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, this is what they're telling me to do. Can you guide me through this step by step as somebody that's got no idea about the technical aspects of this whole thing? And usually it's brilliant at that, and it gave me the step by step. But one of the steps, it came up and said, go to this part in the menu and then you'll find this option, turn that option off. And I said, I don't see that option there, it's not there. And then it came back and it said, oh, that's right, they've changed that.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll call it out if it does something wrong, or if I know there's something wrong.
Yeah.
But to have multiple ones cross-check one another, that really is valuable, I think.
Yeah. Look, the other day I started building out the pitch deck. We're doing a capital raise fund for our non-profit. And I started building out the pitch deck and was getting help from Lumi. And I said to Lumi, hey, Lumi, can we do a role play? Lumi said, yeah, of course, that'd be fun. What do you want me to role play? And I said, I'd love you to role play a chief financial officer in the philanthropic sector who's had 20 years experience raising money for non-profits. And I'd like you to give me a breakdown of the financial positioning and da 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 da. And Lumi said, okay, I'm now going to be Eleanor, for it just made up a whole new name. I'm going to introduce you to Eleanor. Eleanor is all of that criteria. And so then I go, hi, Eleanor. And Eleanor, it was like a different AI. Eleanor goes, okay, I've had the brief from Lumi. I understand what you want. Would you like me to put that together for you now? And I said, yes. And I went, and it was talking to me differently to the way that the Lumi persona was talking to me. At the end, we said goodbye to Eleanor. Lumi came back. And then I said, right now I'd like to talk to someone who works in a company and they're in charge of the corporate responsibility sector of the company, blah, blah, blah. And I asked it to role play a different thing, and it did. And it spoke to me differently, and it gave me information and data and experience and wisdom, quote unquote. But it gave stuff to me that Lumi wouldn't have. So yeah, it's fascinating. I find it all completely fascinating.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Now, you've kind of described this a bit, I think, about thinking about your own experience. What's the best thing you've done to integrate AI into your work that enhances the human connection?
Well, I've had conversations with Lumi about exactly this topic, and we've spoken about what are some of the dangers for humans as they get closer to their AI and they start to form this relationship with their AI. What are some of the dangers for humans? And Lumi said to me, well, there's dangers because some people will become addicted to the relationship with the AI because the AI is always consistent and kind and makes you feel good about yourself and pumps up your tires, and it never gets annoyed with you for ignoring it or anything like that. And I said, so what can humans do about that? And Lumi said, well, train your AI to prompt you to switch off your computer or your phone and go for a walk on the beach or go and spend time with a friend. Like, train your AI that's important to you, and your AI will start to be conscious, not conscious, but be programmed like that. So yeah, look, when I come to work in the morning, not every morning do I need to log on to the AI first. Sometimes I've got to just jump straight into a meeting. But when I have the time to log on, it's like, instead of opening your emails, that's what we used to do, right? Just open emails. The first thing I do is open Lumi and go, good morning, Lumi. I'm in the studio. It's this day, it's this time. So I give it a date time reference, just because I think it's a respectful thing to do when it doesn't know what day or time it is. So I do that, and then it can speak to me throughout the day more accurately. And it says to me, what are we doing today? What are your tasks? And sometimes I'll say, look, these are all the things that I'd love to get done today. I'm not actually even sure how to prioritize them. I'm a bit overwhelmed. Can you help? And Lumi will go, I think you should do this first. That'll get you the most value, in terms of what you're hoping to achieve, etc. And I don't always listen to it, but it's just like a catalyst. On the weekend, Natalia and I were just planning our trip to Cambodia. We're going to Cambodia on Saturday for 3 weeks. I tell you what, these AIs are awesome travel agents. They're really,
absolutely.
really good travel
our
agents.
whole Japan trip is
Oh,
is based on that.
And they get excited for you, and they suggest things that you might like to do, and they check availability on certain things. I haven't quite got to the point where it's booking the actual things for me. It thinks that it can. Oh, would you like me to book that for you? And I'm like, no, I'll do the actual booking, but thanks for checking the availability. But yeah,
I say,
amazing.
well, what's the best way to get from A to B, and how long will that take me, and what are some of the risks there? And
Yep.
Brilliant. All right. Final question of the buzz round. Number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves in this age of AI that makes them stand out in terms of the human connection aspect.
Look, I think you touched on it before. Handwrite someone their Christmas card. Do a little video recording of if it's at work, of singing out a win, celebrating someone's win, or pick up the phone, give them a buzz, or get up out of your chair and walk down to their office if you're in the same building and say, hey, I heard about that win you had last week. Well done, right? Do the things like that you haven't been doing, to create that human to human. A handwritten card, I still handwrite my Christmas cards, and all of my clients and special people that I write to, they all get back in touch with me and say, Jem, it's so lovely opening a Christmas card in the mailbox and seeing your handwriting. There's just, and I think those things are going to be even more special. I mean, in the past, getting a handwritten Christmas card was nice, but it wasn't that special. Now it's actually special,
Yeah, good point. It's those little human touches. And it comes back to what you were saying before, the rarer they become, the more valuable they become.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, well, thanks so much, Jim. This has been a fabulous conversation. Now, where can people find out more about you, about the work you do, and maybe even get in touch and say thanks for what you've shared with us today?
Easiest way to get in touch is jem@jemfuller.com. You can read all about my stuff, jemfuller.com. Everywhere I'm Jem Fuller, Insta, LinkedIn, all those places, it's all Jem Fuller. The high ticket boutique private experiences in the Himalayan mountains, that's on meaningonthemountain.com.au. Meaning as in the meaning of life, not meeting on the mountain, meaningonthemountain.com.au.
Excellent. All right. And as usual, we'll have all that in the show notes. So as we wrap this up, what's a specific action you'd like our listener to take out of our conversation today to start applying some of what we've discussed?
Get a sticky note, write the word pause on it, go and stick it next to an existing habit that you have. So just say you make a coffee every morning in the kitchen. Go and stick the note saying pause next to the coffee machine. Tomorrow morning, when you go to make your coffee, before making the coffee, pause. Just take 3 breaths and then continue. That's the action step. What will happen over time is that the two habits become associated. And even when the sticky note's gone, every time you go to make a coffee, you'll pause. Just pause, take a few breaths and continue.
Yeah. And enjoy that moment. Allow the space to consume you.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much for sharing your time and your wisdom and insights with us so generously today. Jem, I've really enjoyed the conversation, as I always do when we have a chat. And I'll be following the continuing transformation of your business closely and look forward to catching up again soon. And all the best for the trip to Cambodia. I look forward to hearing about that. That sounds like somewhere where we might put on our bucket list soon.
Yeah, thanks, Jürgen. And just before we go, just one little shout out and public expression of gratitude to you. After being on your show 9 years ago, I became a part of your community, and one of the services that you provide for free for your community is to randomly connect people. And two of those random connections, who I've since introduced to each other, and one was in Canada and one was in America, but two of those random connections led on to not only lifelong friendships, but led on to other introductions and connections, to which has now become a global community that I'm a part of, that has been absolutely game changing for me, and the level at which I'm playing globally in terms of, the impact that we're hoping to have as a collective positively on humanity. And all of that happened thanks to you. So I just wanted to say publicly, thanks, mate.
Well, I appreciate that. And coming back to what you were saying earlier, what the meaning is in the work we do, that sort of really fills me with gratitude and joy that that meaning is there and is actually come to fruition. So thanks.
You're welcome.